What's good, everybody? It is Big Time Sports Podcast with me, your host, Percy Garner, and we are blessed with the one and only Mike Gallina. But before we get to Mike, I just want to remind you guys, subscribe our page. We're getting close to 1,000. That's our goal. Well, and then we'll set another goal after that. But we do appreciate the support so far. We appreciate the love we have on Facebook, around 55,000 followers over there. And again, lots of sports, high school sports, college sports coming your way on the Big Time Sports Facebook and YouTube channel. Make sure you stay tuned. And then we also have the Tuscarawas Sports Hall of Fame coming up. So a lot of stuff going on. The Pro Football Hall of Fame, everything is happening. So make sure you stay tuned to the website, the Facebook, and the YouTube if you want to catch live sports here in Northeast Ohio. Okay. Really quick intro because I want to get to a lot of the stuff that me and Mike are going to be talking about today. But since I keep bringing him up, let's at least check in with Mike to see how he's doing. It's been a minute since he's been on the show. He's had vacations, a lot of things going on. What updates you got for us, Mike? How's life been?
Percy, thank you. Right away, you used that word blessing. Well, I want you to know that it's a blessing every time I can huddle up with you and let us energize your subscriber list. Everybody's somewhere different in their journey. And when they can plug in to a podcast or just something that allows them to reflect, it's a good thing because it takes the narrative you and I are having and lets folk bump into it wherever they are in their life journey. So right away, it's always a blessing. And knowing we get to multiply it to let other people bump into it on their journey, there's where it multiplies. So right away, hear my gratitude to be able to do that. And for me, leadership's been going on across the organization. So I have a reach now beyond alt care, and that the entire Altman Health system uses me to do leadership development. So I'm over to Alliance, over to Orville, down to Pomerane, some just around you guys. And then, of course, here at the Canton campus. So I'd say life's good because I'm able to bump into more folks on a leadership journey, nudge them, and just let them go run. And so I would say blessed to do that in a multiplicative way. And so we'll do the same, you and me, on the call today.
Love it. And there it is. That's another reason I love having you. I always say this, but it's just a joy to be around positivity and people who have been, focusing and impacting, students, everybody, not just students, but it's always good to just hear from someone and be poured into, and not always be, doing the pouring. So, but today we're going to be talking about, obviously, Guardians. We always talk Guardians when Mike's on the show. And then, we got some other things to touch into. We always hit on, some of the education points that Mike has done over the years. And we got a good one today. So we're going to get into all that. But first, we want to start with some, depending on how you look at this, for me, I've grown to love this player for the Guardians, of course. And I would hate to see him go. But it's a part of the business. And, there's a lot of talks of Stephen Kwan being traded. I know the Dodgers are, foaming at the mouth. They really want Stephen Kwan on their team, and who wouldn't? Hopefully he stays a Guardian, but sometimes moves are made. It's just meant to be made. And I hate to feed into the narrative that always happens when it comes to Guardians or Indians history is we get these, we grow these great players and then we ship them off to the big markets. But hey, it's the business again, and I would hate to see him go. But if it's gonna, I guess, make his career better, give him a chance to win a championship, to get more exposure, because people in Cleveland sometimes they don't get the same, I guess, shine as people in LA, New York, Boston, all that stuff. So, and we know he's a player that deserves every moment of shine he gets, even though he doesn't seem like the personality that's looking for it. He just wants to play ball and get the job done and work hard for his team. And who wouldn't want to have that type of person on their team? So how are you feeling about these rumors? Are you think it's going to happen? Do you think it's smart? Where are you at?
First, you described Stephen Kwan beautifully because you hit the player, which is a shining star, plays the game right, manages all of the business of baseball correctly, becomes that hood ornament, if you will, of all things positive about the Guardians. And we've had others come and go, but he has been that trending star, almost like over my shoulder on this screen. He's rising in the sky. And now here it is. Our hearts fall in love. We love his productivity. He helps the team in the city, and we're going to lose all of that asset potentially. And you hit it. The Dodgers, Padres, Phillies seem to be the three that are poking at this right now. And here's the ache: you have this valued asset that's trending, like we just said, a star in the sky. But our Indians and Guardians always look at the max value of that asset and say, what can we do to get two or three more? And then those two or three push somebody else up to a valued asset. They move on and we get two or three more. So the way we win, it seems like, is taking the valued asset and multiplying it times a couple to keep pushing the whole organization up. So in a way, it's a unique business model. So while our hearts ache because we do not want to lose to Stephen Kwan, I can almost hear those conversations on the business in the background to say, we're now going to put a couple more in the fold and it's going to push us up, even though everybody's going to ache to lose a Stephen Kwan. And I worry about us losing him because right now the energy, we're at 500. Now you take away something that the community values. Does it change their outlook about our Guardians? So you have the business of baseball and you have the emotional community asset. And oh, I'd hate to see him go, but I also know what the Guardians front office is trying to do with that. I just hope they don't sell cheap. Oh,
Yeah. Yeah. I would say for the most part, they've been good at doing that in my lifetime. Um, when you think about even just recently, I think Andres Jimenez was someone who came over in a trade where I think we sent Lindor over and then we got Jimenez. And, then we were like in the same position, like, no, don't trade him away. So, I'm glad you made that point because, like I think I said last time we were talking on the show was, people are coming to me like, don't, what are we doing, getting rid of Andres Jimenez and all this stuff, and now I'm sure those people are still walking around Giant Eagle going like, now we're gonna get rid of Quan. What's going on? But they don't always see the big picture. Obviously, it's the front office's job to exactly do what you said, and that's not sell cheap and get some things that we can work with because we're good at producing and working and developing talent. So people we can get some big some names in that trade, and then next thing you know, we're going to be seeing them on a day-to-day basis in that Guardians uniform. And then I'm guessing in a few years we're going to be in the trade talks with them, and it's like a cycle. It's a vicious cycle. But hopefully we can get a long run and with a few of those players that we get for Quan if we do decide to trade him. So it's going to be exciting.
no, and you throw in Shane Bieber. I mean, he's on his way, and folks are
Mhm.
saying, hey, he was just getting himself back to ready, and now he's going to be with the Blue Jays, and Cal Stevens coming, and he's a double A guy now. So you just described it so perfectly to say our hearts connect, but we try to find that prospect as we move along. And before we jump off that target, I love being the flip interviewer because you're an awesome ball player and we need folks to tap into your expertise. So let's put you in the Stephen Kwan, Shane Bieber role. You're in the locker room. You're managing all this as a player, just like you did. Talk to us about that side of it, the player side of it, when all this is going on, or if you'd have been the guy involved with it at some point in your career. So just let us sneak peek into that locker room, into the life of the player, aside from all the business stuff that's going on. So from your perspective,
Yeah. For me, the first thing that comes to my mind is if you've built a family, got a house, you've kind of connected to the community, you maybe have a church or something that connects you beyond baseball to wherever you are. I know I'm speaking of example, Brian Shaw. I think the story with him is before he got traded from Arizona, he literally just bought a house. I think they just closed, and then he got the call that he's getting traded to Cleveland. So those things, and we know it's a part of the business. And other sports, the players have kind of turned that on its head, and now they kind of control their destiny. But at the end of the day, owners and GMs and people who run these ball clubs, they have the final say in especially baseball and NFL, of where you're going to go. And you don't, I think there may be 0.1% that get a chance to say, hey, I would not like to go there. And again, most of that is in the NBA. Not many players in the NFL or MLB get to say, actually, I don't want to go there, guys. So that is one thing I think of. The other thing is, when I played in Cleveland, you grow a bond, and I was only there for a couple months, and the friendships that I had built, and just going to the because you're with those people more than you are with your family, so you build a special bond, and it's rough having to say, hey, you know what? Now we were teammates, kind of family members, and now we're going to be competing against each other sometimes in the same day. I don't know if you saw that where
Did
the
how
player
crazy.
got traded. It's just crazy.
One clubhouse to the other, and I'm pitching against you.
Yeah,
That's backyard baseball.
true, true, true.
Find a rewarding career close to home at Kimball. You'll find outstanding benefits, a supportive team, and opportunities for career growth. Working for a local family company really makes a difference. Apply today.
Aaron Kovalchik, attorney at law. Family court matters are important to you. You need an attorney that will listen to your concerns and execute a plan that will bring the results that you're looking for. That attorney is Aaron Kovalchik. For divorce or dissolution or custody, consult attorney Aaron Kovalchik. Inquire now at kovalchiklaw.com. That is www.kovalchiklaw.com. It's weird. So those are like the first two things that come to my mind. And then the third is just, which shouldn't necessarily be the third, and it kind of connects with the one, is just, with me, when I got released by the Philadelphia Phillies, I thought maybe my career might be over. And, my wife kind of had a sigh of relief, like, well, now we can be a normal family again. Except there was one team that she said, okay, then they're close. We'll allow you to go there if they call. And it happened to be obviously the Indians at the time, now Guardians. But at the end of the day, there's a lot of things you kind of build in a spot, depending on the amount of time that you're there, whether that's 1 year, 2 year, 3 years, 4 years, or in Luka Doncic's case with Dallas Mavericks to LA Lakers, he had been there for 7 years and kind of just thought, well, I'm going to be here the rest of my life. This is going to be my place. And then stuff can just be flipped on its head like that. So I'm always looking at it from the player's perspective, since I never was in a position to lead or manage a ball club. And I always look at it, the disadvantages, but sometimes it could be positive. If you don't have the best relationship in the clubhouse, the culture's not what you want it to be, which I've never experienced, fortunately for me, but I know there's players out there who have. It could be a fresh start, or maybe like with me with the Phillies, they're a great organization, but things just weren't clicking between us in a relationship the way they wanted me to throw, the way I would respond to their coaching. And I love to be coached. It wasn't like I was bashing against their, or fighting against their instruction. It just wasn't meshing well. And after 5 years, they decided to cut ties, and it ended up working out for me. I got to the Indians organization. I really bonded with their coaching staff and their philosophy, and then I just took off. So there is a little bit of part of me there, depending on the situation, that could say, hey, you look, at the end of the day, it's a fresh start. I love it. It could be good for a player, but for me, in most situations, it's kind of, tearing a player out of a community, out of a family, out of a house, out of a comfort, at the end of the day. And I know if being comfortable isn't always a good thing, technically. So I'm always a firm believer of getting out of your comfort zone so you can grow. But when it comes to that situation, being at home, being in a community, being a part of a family, that's a little different. And when you just told one day without you being even notified, hey, yeah, you're going to San Diego. You're like, okay, I'm in Ohio. Now I'm on the other side of the nation. This is different. But that's kind of my thoughts on that. And sometimes it might be better going from one place to the other. Like if you're from, Cleveland or the area like me, and say I was playing with a team out west and I get shipped all the way back home, there could be a good thing. So, yeah.
I love how you took us around it. I call it full circle, Percy, and that is there's the bond nature. So there's that sense of, oh, and then you've got that idea of comfort, which means emotion. And if you're unplugged from that emotionally, it's hard to respond because it's changed in its biggest way. And to your point, even the idea of, hey, it's a fresh start, there's still that body's reaction to change and new leadership in your family. So thank you for wrapping it right around to say, hey, before you just see that guy in a new uniform on ESPN thinking everything is good because he's with his new team with his first at bat, so much more has gone on before he puts one foot in that batter's box. So I appreciate you taking us to the reality of it, family,
Sure.
relationship, individual personality, before you just get into the production of baseball. Every
Yeah.
player's going through it. So thank you for letting us sneak in there and take a peek behind that curtain.
Of course, of course. I always like to share my experiences the best way I can, and it's hopefully that was interesting to the listeners. But I will say I suffered something that's worse than getting traded, and that's just being released, or as my son would say, being fired. So,
Not
but
his
at the end
choice
of the day,
word. You got fired, Dad.
yes, that's what he told me. You got fired from baseball. I'm like, I mean, technically, yeah, I guess I did, but no, you know, it's it, it's the life of sports. You obviously there's great rewards, but at the end of the day, there could be some turmoil or something that doesn't go your way, and that kind of leads us into the next point I was going to talk about with the Guardians, and that's I guess it's all sports though. It's not just baseball. But it just seems that there's, a lot of stuff going on. I feel like these sports are really leaning into, the betting and all that stuff. And now it's kind of affecting some players. And there's investigations of some of our Guardians players, which we hold dearly, and one of them is all-star and one of the best closers in the game, struggling this year, but has been known as the guy if you want a closer on your team. One at least one of the top three. Um, and it's tough to see them in this situation, especially if it comes out that they're completely innocent, but they had to go through this, and then people, of course, like to jump to conclusions and the whole nine. But being in these situations, it can't be, it's got to be hard to compete, but they have been put on, non-disciplinary leave, paid leave. So that's one thing, because I'm pretty sure it could be really difficult to compete with this laying, like kind of just staying over you like a cloud wherever you go. And I know it's tough to move forward after, whatever comes out, but at the end of the day, they're still expected to go out and perform no matter what. So I guess talk about it from, kind of how you see it. Because I know how I see it as an athlete, all this stuff. It could be hindrance to your performance. You never could be the same. There's a lot of things that could go wrong. And that's even if, they're completely innocent. There's still things that could be going wrong. So a lot of things that could go wrong. Hopefully, I'm hoping for the best. But, kind of from your viewpoint, how do you see this whole sports and betting and gambling situation? How do you see that panning out, and how do you see that affecting the game?
Wait, Percy. So I say it's an unsettling situation for us to talk about, but it does let us talk about how sports betting, and particularly in-game prop betting, has taken over the culture of the viewer. The ball player himself or herself, depending on the game, they're held to the regard. Their collective bargaining talks about this. But when you start to see the Class A Ortiz thing show up, here's what folks sometimes don't always know. And that is right away, they are innocent until proven guilty. So right away, that's the truth. But the hard part is folks do it the other way around. Those guys are wrong. And so to your point, everything they'll do after this, folks are going to pounce on the negative side. But here's how this thing came about, because they're both pitchers. In-game betting, they have certain things that you can bet on if these things happen. And what happened was they noticed in both pitchers' cases pitches that were irregular, which means the pitch happened and betting had occurred really, really high just before it. So the analytics of betting said, hey, that's something we need to look at. So on June 15th, Ortiz threw a pitch. Then again on June 27th, another pitch, and both times betting had escalated just ahead of the pitch. So the in-game bet, the analytics said that's unusual betting pattern. So when that happens, they let the league know. They have folks, FBI agents surrounding this stuff, so they're paying attention. And that's what caused this. Same thing with Class A. A couple of irregular bets happened ahead of a pitch that was thrown for a ball, or that didn't look like it should be the regular sequence. So they call it irregular pitch location to allow a prop bet to happen. So this is now under scrutiny. And these two pitchers, again, they're innocent until proven guilty, but the analytics are going to vet this out. In fact, I think Ortiz's investigation is now pushed out to the end of August.
Wow.
They want more time to look at more of his pitching. So, Percy, you nailed it. The initial reaction is, oh, this is going to go like this bad cloud all around them. But sports betting has caused this extra scrutiny. Some will say betting bad. You shouldn't have it so much colliding with the game. Others will say good that the analytics exist so that you can get deeper into some things that may have always been going on. So now there's going to be the conversation as this comes along. But for us, two critical pitchers as we're trying to get into a wild card position. So again, the worst time, even if there ever is a good time for this. So thanks for letting me take you inside the analytics of it to let folks know as they're watching this great show why that's going down like it is.
Yeah, because I was not familiar how all that works. I'm not a big gambler. I'm not someone who likes. I'm kind of frugal now in my is that I'm getting older, and I feel like I rather put my money somewhere that has for sure gains, whether that be and I'm not a financial advisor, so I'm just telling you what I'm doing. But I like the high yield savings accounts and obviously some investing and retirement accounts and stuff like that. And I'd rather just see it grow over time with the compound interest. I used to love just getting online and looking at, investment calculators and saying, okay, if I put this amount of money in here and I let it sit for this long, this is how much money, and that's the nerd in me. But
I'll call that own that nerd-ish behavior because that's the worthy investment.
There we go. Now, I know I don't have much time with you, but I want to get on these next things. I know we had to talk about, Class A and Ortiz and stuff like that, but something that we always hit on every episode is some of that, leadership that you've been, I guess the responsibility has been put upon you your whole life. I feel like you've been in a position to impact people in a positive way. And I always like searching deep some of the things that you have on the internet. And, we always talk about these minutes with Mike. And something that came across, and I had to dig a little bit on this one, but this one I thought was pretty amazing. And it comes from Andy Stanley and his book, Next Generation Leader, which I've never read. And the three things you were talking about were courage, fear, and risk. There it is. He's got it ready on there. There it is.
Well, yep. If you're searching for it, thank you for teeing me up with that one, Percy. Yep, right here, the one.
Of course. Now there's some things that we can dive into here, and I kind of highlighted some of the things. So if you want, I'll put the actual video, which was beautifully animated, which you won't get to see actual Mike's face like you are at this show, but I'll put the link in the description so you can go watch the video. It's very short and packed full of nuggets and stuff that you can take into your life. Sure of it, confident of it. But the thing I loved is the questions that were asked during the video is, are we careful or are we fearful? And, and then you went into even deeper, like, okay, this is how careful would be, and this is how fearful would be. And just one of them that, I kind of want to hit on and we'll let you go is, I'll take a few. Progress versus protection, which we all know. Being careful can lead to progress, and being fearful is about protection. And then, and this is kind of one I can see myself in, is, calculates risk versus avoids risk. And I never really looked at leadership and having to take risks. Now that makes me scared to lead even more. But But no, at the end of the day, can you go back to when you were making this video and when you were reading this book by Andy Stanley? Where was your mind at, and what did you kind of take from that upon on top of all these things? Well, I guess I forgot to mention the moving boldly into the future in spite of certain uncertainty and risk. That's kind of what you were saying. The whole thing was, but I just loved the comparison of each side. But yeah, when you were reading this book and you were making this video, kind of, can you take us and see, dive deeper into what you were thinking when you were making this video?
Yep. Percy, thanks for teasing those out. And what I mean by teasing them out, you take those words like you did. A couple examples there. You said, okay, are we careful or are we fearful? And you set them side by side. Or you come on down, you take another set side by side. Calculates risk or avoids risk. Just like for examples. What we do with those is cause us to have a mindset shift. It is in our mindset. Do we have that one side that's more soft, or if you will, less engaged, or the other side that's perhaps more engaged, more energized, and we control that mindset or that thought. So what we want to make sure in leadership, because leadership at its core is influence. It's not title, it's not rank, it's not all the things that folks will rack up as far as tangible items. Some will try to define leadership with all that. It's about influence. And can we influence others' mindset to cause their skills and talents to get up and in? So if they're fearful and it's causing them not to be able to execute, then we need to help them with their mindset to say, let's come off fearful and careful. Careful is a measured. You'll still do. Fearful could put you in paralysis and you'll do nothing. So you want to use the words that always keep an opportunity open for you rather than a closed door or even a closed use of your skills. So that's why I take you there to say it's a mindset shift to say one is always in the doing, the other sometimes almost grabs you up and stymies you. So that's why those words are side by side, to cause you not to be stymied, but to get up and in and let your mindset go there.
Yeah, I think of like two specific examples. One I was already thinking about before I even came here, and when I was watching the video, it popped in my head right away. And then the other one I just thought of now. We've been talking about Guardians and baseball and all this stuff, and I'll get to that when we talked to a little bit about the show, but in the past show. But this first one, I immediately thought of my son is 12 now. He's probably going to be wanting to go to his friends, want to go get out and do things. He's been to church camp, and my wife is just like, you're not leaving my sight. Like, so,
Yeah.
And she's obviously in full protection mode, and, which could result in, the paralysis by analysis and thinking of all the things that are going to go wrong. And it's using the imagination instead of reality, and just things that we're like, okay, we're going to use logic in this situation. What are things that are likely to actually happen? But as a mother, as a parent, I can see this. I see this on a regular basis. My mom kind of had this, where she wouldn't get on any airplane, even though if you want to look at stats, airplanes are safer than cars. But she didn't care. That one plane crash she saw every year just ruined her, not the thousands of car accidents. So those two things are just things that pop in my head. And then, of course, I want to add on the baseball one is me. I kind of had that points in my career where, I look at myself and I say this with as much humility as I could say with me saying this statement is, God gave me a talented, I got a great arm and I was able to throw really hard. And I also had special movement on my pitches that made them, seem better than they actually were if it was just a straight fastball. So my sinker was good. I threw hard. A lot of things going in my favor, but I'd go through these spells in baseball where I just felt like, I think I related it to Space Jam when all the NBA players had their talents taken away. You get to a mode where you're just like, you no longer have the confidence and you're not just being careful like, hey, the hitter's up here. I should probably throw this, maybe look at this side of the plate. Let's attack this side. That's being careful. But there was points where I was just like, and I think we've seen big league pitchers do this where they just throw over the first base because they're just like, I don't want to throw it home. So, and we've also seen it in the movies. But for me, I'd be, just so fearful of either one, making a mistake, two, looking silly. And, I'm a professional pitcher, so you can't look silly. I'm supposed to be able to do this stuff in my sleep. And it really affect me to where I couldn't do anything. And that was kind of the last straw for the Phillies, which would made us kind of separate and then want to release me. But man, it really can damage. Some people might not think it's that big of a deal. Well, I can be a little overprotective, or I don't want to try that. There's too much risk. But at the end of the day, sometimes that's how we grow. What I was referring to earlier is being in the comfort zone can lead to some negative outcomes. So, for me, the thing I would like to do is I'm not going to say, hey, go jump off a bridge, it'll change your life. I'm not going to say anything like that. But at the end of the day, there is some comfort zones you got to get out of to grow. And there are some risks that you got to be willing to take to grow and get better and see what you can really use your talents for and achieve. And then there's also this one thing that I haven't shared I don't think I've shared this online at all. My family members know, and some of my friends. There's one thing I'm afraid to do as well, which I've felt, and not to get too, spiritual in the Big Time Sports Show. This is maybe more 99 miles per hour, but
I'm liking you're going there, Percy. I like it.
yeah. Well, I felt a push, from God to not become a pastor, but just to share more about my faith and even speak in churches. And I've pushed against it so much, even to a point where there's a guy I haven't seen since I was probably a toddler, and I'm saying grace over dinner, and he's a pastor, but he lives in states over, but his brother had passed away, so he was coming home for the funeral, and I hadn't talked to him in 30 years. He sits down at the table after I say grace, and he goes, "You got a calling to preach, don't you?" And I was like, "Oh my gosh, God, stop." Like, stop, cut it out. I like doing what I'm doing. I like in my comfort zone. I don't, because I give speeches. I'm willing to do that, but it's a different level of responsibility when you walk into a church and speak. So, I'm trying to push it off as long as I can. But there's been some moments where I've spoken in some churches and it's went well. But at the end of the day, it's still out of my comfort zone and I'm scared. But, who knows what could happen if I go in there, trust God, let it all happen. I could change someone's life. I could change my own life. There's a lot of positives that could happen, but we don't know because I'm not doing it.
Yeah. But Percy, what I love that you did is you described what showed up right in front of you at a dinner. Guy you hadn't seen in 30 years, states over, shows up. And then you just speak truth in a prayer, and he looks at you and calls up the words that you've been thinking about. That's just how you know that you're influencing. So maybe it's not called pastor, but maybe some type of spiritual leadership that will take on a name. And so that's a little bit of that nudging or those promptings. We'll sometimes put the humanistic closure word on it instead of saying, no, it's taking me toward influencing something. Let's see what it becomes. It may be called that, but it may be called something else. Yeah. And that's that opportunity of saying, just keep leaning into it. Just lean into it. That's awesome.
Well, I always love having you on. The thing I want to do from now on is kind of how we did this here. I feel like it really rolled well. And, lately you've been pushing back questions on me. I love asking questions, but you've been pushing back on me and it's been going well. And, I'm really excited to get the show out there so the audience can see this. But, at the end of the day, I appreciate you always coming on the show. The goal is once a month. So we'll see how the next time we can get you on. And hopefully there's some good news with the Guardians at that time. But again, we appreciate the audience for always tuning in, giving us feedback. You can always do that, whether that's here on YouTube, whether that's on Facebook, whether that's wherever you get your audio podcast. If you don't like looking at me and Mike's face, it's fine. You can just do the audio. But yeah, I love making the show. Love having the people that I have on. We got, football season coming up, volleyball, golf, a lot of things happening. We can't wait to bring you the content. Again, always stay tuned to Big Time Sports here on YouTube, Facebook, and our website, bigtimesportsohio.com. And man, thank you again. I'll give you one last chance to say goodbye before we get out here, Mike, but I appreciate having you on the show.
Well, thank you, Percy. It's a blessing. always grateful. And most importantly, if we cause folks to just think about something a little differently, we've done our job because we've lifted them up. So thanks for lifting me up, and continue to lift up that family and everybody down there in the Dover, Philly area, buddy.
Well, thanks for returning the favor, Mike. Always good having you on the show, and we'll see everybody in the next episode. Peace.